I wore his favorite lingerie for another man. He burned it and walked out, leaving me alone. Just like how partners aren't meant to be shared, I guess sharing what's special to them, no matter what it is, also poses as a betrayal too. I thought I had made the smartest, cleanest move ever, only to end up broken and empty. Who says there's a time to cheat and be faithful in a relationship? If such existed, then I'd be crossing the finish line with James right now. Nothing feels right anymore, and I guess there's no need to contemplate over what's already happened. All I have to do is clean it up and start making it right all over again. But how? How do you rebuild a relationship alone when the other person isn't willing to give you any chance? I don't even know how to start, and that's why I'm here to seek any kind of help or advice. Anything that could help me steal James back into my life. I don't care what I have to do. I'll do it, as long as I can have him back. James has been a part of my life for almost 4 years now, and living these few weeks without him beside me anymore feels like I'm rotting away. He was the sweetest person I've ever known, so down to earth, and found even the little things cute and satisfying. Our relationship together was one I never thought would end, not even in my dreams. Everything about us seemed right, all bubbly and colorful, and we were ready to take our relationship to the next step, which was marriage. But I ruined it. My choices and actions that day proved me wrong, confirming things in life never go the way we plan. We have the power and control over every choice and step we take, but when it comes to the outcome and results, we become completely powerless and at the mercy of fate. That's my situation right now. I'm Sarah, an influencer. I'm a social media freak to a fault, and aside from the moments I share with James and a few friends, the rest of my life is basically all about work and social media. I spend almost all day and night taking selfies, hopping on new trends, exercising, shopping, and doing other activities. The level of joy and pleasure I felt each time I saw my posts and feeds blowing up with reactions, comments, and views was just enough to make my day. But with everything that's happened, it doesn't feel the same anymore. James's absence in my life has left me with a painful reality. All that I thought was real was fake. The very same people that once stalked me called me beautiful and all sang my name, calling themselves my fans, and are now the same people throwing hate comments at me and dragging me down with insults and curses. How did everything get to this? Where's the courage I once had the day I betrayed the best and the most precious person in my life? I desperately need that same courage to get him back. It all went south the day my agency got an endorsement, and the best influencer was going to be selected to take up the job. I was so confident, and I knew no one else was a better option than me, and just as I had presumed, I was selected. I was so thrilled, and it made me get the feeling that I was still the trend and the best in my agency. Not until the assistant CEO suggested my competitor, Sally, should take up the opportunity as well. We were both put in a competition with a task to do our best and prove ourselves, and in the end, the winner would be in charge of the endorsement. I felt so wrong and betrayed. It felt like sticking out a candy to me and taking it back before I could even get a taste of it. I was furious and at the same time determined to prove the point that I was over-deserving of the job, and it was a big mistake and a stain on my pride the moment they decided to put me in a competition with the likes of Sally. I guess that was when the seed got planted in me, which has now sprouted into something I can neither nurture nor be proud of. After the announcement that day, I came home furious, and while having dinner with James, I told him about the opportunity I was given and the fact that I had to win my agency over just to earn the shot at such a big endorsement. James encouraged me, telling me I should keep doing what I'm good at and keep believing in myself. He said no matter what happens, I would forever be the best in his eyes, and I didn't need to prove myself to anyone or think too much about it. I felt my confidence refilled, and I went back to work the next day feeling better. But shortly, things slowly began to change. I became too obsessed with my work, and I was slowly drifting from James. Our marriage was in a month, and all that was on my mind was work. I was just too busy to help out with my marriage preparation that I left all the plans and arrangements to James and our families. James tried his best to shoulder everything for both us and our families too. He tried to be understanding, just so I could feel less pressured and focus on my work, knowing fully well how much it meant to me. James's mother was not a big fan of my profession. She thought that my job was too time-consuming, and she actually sat me down and talked to me about it, suggesting that while work is important, we must also prioritize family and love. I didn't care that her advice came from a good place. I was impatient, unreasonable, and so upset. My fans meant the world to me. They were my family, and I loved them, so I didn't care about anything else. As much as I love my boyfriend, the attention I got from my fans cannot be overemphasized. It made me feel special, and the feeling of being special was something I couldn't turn my back on. Because of that, I disliked James's mother. To try and help me understand his mother, he told me to try and be understanding and that his mom was only just concerned about me. But I didn't see how that was the case. In my eyes, she wanted me to give up what I love most. How does staying locked up, doing house chores, having kids, and looking after a husband mean looking out for me? I had concluded within myself that James' mother just hated me, and she was like all those mothers-in-law that put their sons' well-being above any other things. I was happy that as long as my husband supported me, I was always going to have the upper hand. But then James, too, also regretted his decision to support my career for the first time the day I had prioritized my work over his mom. I had ignored her calls on purpose because she wasn't my favorite person. I didn't know she was ill and needed my help getting to the hospital for a checkup. James was caught up in a business trip out of town, so his mom had to reach out to me instead. I had ignored her calls, telling myself I didn't need to see her as much for my relationship to work, and that as long as I loved her son and showed up on the wedding day, that was more than enough for my part. Everything was fine until James called me later in the evening, furious at me. His mom was rushed to the hospital by her neighbors, and they had been trying hard to reach me, but I had been busy all day. He sounded so angry over the phone that instead of feeling bad about what I did, I got upset too. I hung up on him and made sure to finish my work before leaving for the hospital to see what had really gone wrong. When I arrived at the hospital, I hurried over to his mom's room only to find her on a video call with her friends, bragging and laughing hard about her son's upcoming wedding. My anger deepened at the sight of her laughing, especially with the way James had scolded me over the phone. When she saw me, she called me over, asking me to join her, introducing me to her friends as her son's wife. When they asked about my job, she didn't even let me open my mouth and immediately said that I worked on the internet. She bragged about my job and talked about how I was popular and how much money I made. If I were a reasonable person, I would have understood that James's mom was proud of me, my job, and my accomplishments, but she wanted me to make more time for my family. But I wasn't a reasonable person. Instead, I saw her as a hypocrite who wanted to brag with me but didn't want me to enjoy what I did for a living. James arrived later, and after we had taken his mom home, we got back to our place, and that's how we both got into a big fight. James asked what I was doing when his mother called, and I nonchalantly answered that I was working. James almost lost it. He asked what kind of person would prioritize work over family, and I told him that a sane and logical person would. He was so bitter and said that if it were my mom or even cousins that called him while he was working, he'd drop whatever he was doing and answer that call. I didn't doubt that. He valued my family. But I wasn't in the mood to listen to all that trash, so I was about to walk away. That was when he asked me to quit my job or work less so we both don't regret it someday. I overreacted, shouted at him, and said so many harsh things to James. Maybe that was the chance I was given to get my head together, but I had refused to listen, letting my pride get in the way. I asked him why he wasn't quitting his job or reducing the way he worked, and he told me that his job wasn't a problem because he had time for me and his family. He made it clear that whenever anyone calls, he answers, and whenever I need him, he comes running. He doesn't let his work get in the way, but that wasn't the case with me. I refused to pay attention to reason and instead told him that my job was a part of me and that he was being a hater who wanted to hinder my progress. I was going to do anything to get the endorsement and become even more successful than he would ever imagine. I guess that was when my madness started. I became so obsessed and was willing to do anything to earn myself the contract. I came home from work the next day, and James had squeezed in his time despite how hectic things were for him to prepare dinner for me. I was so touched, but I pretended I was still upset and went up to the bedroom. I quickly got changed and put on his favorite lingerie. He had gifted it to me on our very first anniversary together, and each time I put it on, James's eyes would always darken with desire, and he was always willing to do anything I wanted. It was like this weakness, and he was so obsessed with how I looked in that lingerie. I came down and met him sulking as he sat by the dining table. I sneaked in behind him, hugging him and kissing him on his cheeks. He got to his feet, pulling me into a hug, and then we kissed. I can still remember his dreamy eyes that night. It's the complete opposite of the eyes of the man I saw that day. The day I messed up. We made up that evening, and everything went back to normal between us again. It didn't last long, and we had another misunderstanding. I was supposed to go shopping with my mom and his mom, who got along wonderfully. On my way to meet them, I got a call from work that the person in charge of the endorsement wanted to speak to me. The excitement from the news had taken over my whole mind, and I completely forgot about my appointment with my mom and James's mom, leaving them stranded at the mall with all the stuff. They went ahead to buy what they wanted without me, but they didn't take a car to the mall. I was supposed to drive them. They were stuck at the mall with all they bought. My phone was on silent the whole time, and I had missed all the calls from my mom, James, and James's mom. They had to find their way home. I had met up with the client, Jonas, and that was how I got to realize he was my biggest fan since day one. He had been following me up and commenting on all my posts. He even knew things I had forgotten from years back. I was so happy and relieved as I thought everything was sealed already. I mean, since the person in charge was my fan, it was a yes for me. It wasn't until we got deeper into the contract that he told me he was only going to cut Sally off for me if only I'd let him have fun with me. I got so irritated when he said that to my face that I lashed out, saying I was engaged and I would never cheat on my fiancé. I should have stood my ground and remained firm with my decision. I loved James a lot, and I could never imagine hurting him. But those bold words dissolved into weak wishes when he told me I could leave and forget about everything, and that Sally had already agreed to spend time with him. He fed me more by making me see a glorious picture of how many benefits and how much fame Sally stood to possess if she got the deal from me. I was literally going to be beneath her, and coupled with my marriage, no one was going to be interested in me anymore. Hearing all those words messed with my self-confidence for the first time, and I could see myself as a loser. I should have just accepted it and left as long as I had James in my life. But I told him instead to give me time to think about everything. Giving such a response already left an opening on my end, and looking back, I feel nothing but regrets and disgust. I came home and I met James already waiting for me. He didn't even let me speak and started questioning me about my whereabouts the whole time. He mentioned that both our mothers called him complaining about me not showing up, and he had been so worried, especially when he could not get through to me the whole day. I could tell he was worried and just being concerned, but I was just too sensitive at that moment and took his concerned comments the wrong way. I felt like he and his mother were like a hindrance to me exploring and achieving all I wanted to do, so I refused to get his point and instead accused him of seeing my job as nothing important or time-consuming. I even went as far as asking him if I was his fiancé or caregiver for mothers and family members. I added that if his mother or mine couldn't do anything on their own without me, then they should all get out of my life. James lost it, and we had another round of argument. James didn't speak to me the whole night and the next morning before he left for work. I knew he felt upset about our argument last night, and instead of thinking of ways to fix things between us, I pushed everything behind me and left to work. When I got to my agency, I heard my colleagues and everyone gossiping about me and Sally, and what got me fuming with rage was the fact that they were saying the client was already considering Sally as the best option. Anywhere I turned and saw people gathering, I felt uncomfortable and insecure because I felt they were all talking about me. Sally arrived later, and I couldn't help but feel more enraged with how proud and coy she was acting the whole time. Everyone kept flocking around her like she was someone so grand, and I could help but get so affected. I couldn't control it, and I made a stupid, rash decision. I immediately texted Jonas, agreeing to his terms on the condition that he'd send me evidence that I could use to bring Sally down. I thought to myself that if I was to climb the ladder, I might as well take out baby threats around me that could pose as a means to bring me down. Jonas agreed, and that evening we met up. We had a few drinks, and just like that, I committed the biggest mistake of my whole life. It was supposed to happen only once, I told myself, and after that I was going to get married to James and start all over again. But Jonas wasn't thinking the same way. He had secretly taken clips of our dirty moments and had sent them to me, blackmailing me. He told me he was going to give me the deal as promised, but he couldn't help but miss me. I couldn't believe what I had gotten myself into, and no matter how much I begged, he didn't care, and threatened to expose me to everyone. I had fallen into the trap and there was no way out. I didn't know what else to do. And just like that, something that was supposed to happen once turned twice, thrice, and then continued. I couldn't tell James or anyone about it. What was I supposed to do? Jonas kept his promise and sent me clips of Sally, and I had pleaded with him to let me go because I was getting married soon, and I didn't want to lose James. That loser agreed on a condition that I treat him the way I treated James just for a night. He had gone through my page and James' page, and he had seen a post about the lingerie James had gifted me, and he said he wanted me to wear the same lingerie for him that night. He wanted me to make him feel like James, and he needed that to happen on the eve of my wedding day. He promised that was going to be the end to everything, and he was going to delete everything he had about me, and we would all put everything behind us. I was such an idiot. I fell for such lies, and I accepted it. On the eve of my wedding, I had lied to James, telling him my colleagues were going to throw a party to congratulate me on my wedding, and I was going to be home late. He trusted me and didn't ask me too much about it. He dropped me off at work that evening and told me he was going to spend time with his friends as well, and if I needed him to take me home, I should give him a call too. I told him I was going to be fine on my own, and I was going to meet him at home so we could leave for the hotel together for our wedding the next day. After James dropped me off, I made sure he was gone and then hailed a taxi heading over to Janus's hotel. I had taken James's favorite lingerie with me and had changed into them, waiting for Jonas. When Jonas arrived, I had done everything I could just to please him. I even treated him more than I had ever done when I was with James. I bent 10 times lower if I had to, and I did everything he wanted just so I could please him. That was the most terrible experience for me, but I did it, knowing fully well it was going to be the last, and after that, my life would return to normal. But how can one erase a sin that easily? Jonas deleted everything he had on me. I made sure of that before leaving. When I got home, James wasn't home. I should have suspected then that something was wrong, but I cluelessly thought he was still out with friends. Morning came, and James was still missing. I couldn't reach him on his phone, social media, or anywhere. He had suddenly vanished. I was worried, and I went over to the hotel as planned. I felt relieved when I met the whole family and guests, all present as planned, and I immediately joined in getting myself ready for my big day. Hours passed, and the guests were all present, but my groom was missing. It clocked noon, and more hours passed, and just like that, everyone began to leave. I eventually went to take off my wedding gown and change into normal clothes. I was disappointed and embarrassed, and I couldn't face anyone. The whole media was buzzing about me, and everyone that knew me was saying things about me. My family, as well as James's family, was furious and worried too, as no one could get through to him. I went back to our house to check for him, only to find James in the living room eating popcorn while watching a TV series. I almost lost my mind. Everyone was out there worried and concerned about him, and here he was laughing and having fun to his heart's content. He acted like he had not heard me come in or noticed my presence. His eyes were all swollen. I don't know if it was from crying or laughing too hard from the series he was watching. Driven by rage, I charged towards the living room, smashing his television to the ground and exploding at him. I shouted like a banshee, calling him names and pointing out how much he had embarrassed me and my family and what he had put me through. I talked about my reputation and the fact that people had turned me into a comedic topic, and everyone was all looking to have a piece of me because of him. I cried with all my might, asking him if our wedding day meant nothing but this to him, and if he wasn't going to tie the knot with me, he should never have come into my life from the beginning. James threw his popcorn at me as he jolted to his feet and filled with extreme rage. He cursed at me, saying he should be the one saying all that to me. He said he regretted having a waste like me in his life for 4 years now, and he couldn't believe he almost ended up marrying someone like me. I was shocked at his words and scared too. He bolted upstairs, returning with my lingerie in his hands. He revealed to me that while he was at the party with his friend last night, someone had sent him a live video of me in the lingerie, acting so immoral and doing things he would never have thought I could do. He said he felt mortified, especially with all the disappointed comments his friends who had seen the video were throwing at him. He called me his biggest misfortune, and I was an embarrassment to him and his family, and he could never bring himself to marry someone like me ever. He asked me 1,000,000 times how I could do such a thing to him, and no matter how many times he asked me, I couldn't find the answers to respond, and all I could do was stand frozen, crying and sobbing. James was far too gone, and he was shouting and throwing a tantrum, and I couldn't do anything to calm him other than cry. He took the lingerie, throwing it into the steel bin, and sent a lit lighter along, setting it in flames. He then glared at me, and the next words he threw at me crushed my soul. He growled at me, saying that the same way he was burning the lingering he once liked, That was the exact way he was burning me completely out of his life as well. He ordered me to get out of his house, and he never wanted to hear anything about me or set his eyes on me ever again. He told me there was no need for me to get my stuff, that he had spent the whole day cleaning up his house and his life, and my stuff was already at my family's place. I felt my breath seize, and I passed out. When I woke up, I saw myself in my family's home. I asked my mom what had happened, and she said James had left me outside and had called them to pick me up. I couldn't believe my ears. James had completely thrown me away from his life, and I couldn't do anything but flood my cheeks with tears of regret. Update. Secrets. I mean, why do we even have that word when nothing ever stays hidden forever? I had just lost James and now a career I was so obsessed with. I can't accept the fact that after all the dirty things I did, everything all came down to nothing. I lost everything. My life, my love, my work, my whole world. After my breakup with James, I had decided to give James and me time so we could both heal. The day the board made a decision on who was taking up the endorsement, I had already expected it was going to be me, but to my shock, that heartless Jonas had given the deal to Sally. I was so furious and damaged that I had no idea how I survived that blow. I confronted Jonas after everything, and he said he could never pick me, especially with the controversy I had going on in my life already due to my breakup with James. I confronted him, asking him why he did such things to me, and Jonas said he wasn't the one responsible for what happened between me and James. It was Sally. She had given him the best offer and had suggested the plan to set me up that night. She was the one that sent the live video to my husband, and he doesn't care whatever happens to me. I confronted Sally after that, and clearly she was not remorseful. She boasted to my face about being above me now, and I had no right to raise my voice to her, and she has no business with losers like me. I couldn't control myself anymore when I released the video Jonas had given me of her, and the whole clip went viral, leading to both her and Jonas losing face and everything as well. I made sure we were both down in hell, as I couldn't bear to be the only person suffering. I regret everything I did, and I wish I had just let go of my thirst for fame and recognition when James's mom and James had brought it up. I have tried begging James for weeks now. I've tried to reach out to him, but he has completely cut me off. I have nowhere else to go or anything left for myself. I had deleted my social media accounts, quit my jobs, and left for a completely new environment. I'm hoping to start my life all over again, but no matter how hard I try, I still can't escape the hell I brought myself into.